Dari on World Streams Radio. Thank you to our listeners from all around the world for joining us. To learn more about World Streams Radio, visit our website, worldstreams.org. You can also find us now on Facebook at facebook.com/worldstreams. Our guest tonight is Dr. Helen Caldicott, the single most articulate and passionate advocate of citizen action to remedy the nuclear and environmental crises. Dr. Caldicott has devoted the last 38 years to an international campaign to educate the public about the medical hazards of the nuclear age and the necessary changes to human behavior to stop environmental destruction. Dr. Caldicott currently divides her time between Australia and the U.S., where she lectures widely. She founded the U.S.-based Nuclear Policy Research Institute, which has evolved into Beyond Nuclear, of which she is the founding president. Beyond Nuclear aims to educate and activate the public about the connections between nuclear power and nuclear weapons and the need to abandon both to safeguard our future. Hello, Saeed. Hello and welcome, Dr. Caldicott. It's certainly an honor and pleasure to have you with us on World Streams tonight. Well, actually, it's morning where you are. Good morning to you, Dr. Caldicott.
Good morning. Thank you very much.
Hello, Dari, and good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us, to all our listeners from around the world. And good morning to you, Dr. Caldicott. Thank you for taking the time to be with us this morning. Of course, we're almost near the 90-day mark since the tsunami, the disaster that hit Japan and disabled the Fukushima nuclear plant. Yesterday, Dr. Caldicott, the IAEA issued a scathing report that Japan actually underestimated the potential of disaster at the Fukushima plant. What can you tell us about that?
Well, I think there have been several things operating. I think that no one understood what had happened actually for many weeks afterwards, because it's not until recently that they were able to put in detectors detecting water level in units 1, 2, and 3, and found that there was virtually no water in Unit 1, and that almost certainly right from the beginning there had been a massive meltdown within the first few hours, which had probably penetrated the floor of the containment vessel or the vessel onto the concrete floor. And similarly in Units 2 and 3, I think they haven't really worked out what the damage is, but they say that they've had meltdowns as well. So this is an absolute catastrophe beyond anything anybody ever imagined. That's number one. Number two, they've been operating by the seat of their pants. No one really knows or has any idea of the amount of radiation that has been escaping and is still doing so. First of all, the monitors measuring external gamma radiation were knocked out by the tsunami. Secondly, there was such random chaos that people haven't been measuring radiation. There have been intermittent radiation detections in food south of Tokyo, near Tokyo, in various other places, and also radiation in food has been detected in the United States and indeed in Europe. So all of the estimates that they talk about releasing of radiation, they are estimates, they're guesstimates. That's what the nuclear industry tend to do. They don't so much measure as they estimate and guess. And then there is this implicit cover-up that's been going on forever in the Japanese system, both politically and with TEPCO, and it's just come out with a series of 4 articles in Der Spiegel recently that TEPCO has absolutely paid its way in every small village where there's a reactor, and they build this huge sports stadiums and wonderful things for older people, and so they bribe their people to accept a death machine, and then the people of Japan become so dependent upon this money that those who are even deeply opposed to a reactor then after time support it. So the whole thing is an absolute situation of bribery, corruption, wickedness, and long-term murder, I would say.
So in Japan, actually, by mentioning TEPCO is, by the way, the managing company that actually runs the plants. There were some different readings from what TEPCO was reading, and actually other organizations. Why was there any discrepancy between the two for radiation levels on the ground?
Well, they haven't been measuring much. I mean, there was an explosion, maybe, well, we're not sure, a nuclear explosion, but an explosion at Unit 4 cooling pool and also Unit 3 cooling pool, and pieces of spent fuel rods and plutonium have been found 1.5 to 2 miles away from the plant. But, you know, that might be just an arbitrary pickup. It's probably all over the place. Certainly plutonium and americium and the like have been measured in the United States. So the most dangerous elements known to the human race, such that millions of a gram of plutonium can cause cancer, are escaping from that reactor. That they have been measuring children's thyroids with Geiger counters. Now, radioactive iodine, which concentrates in the thyroid gland, gives off two specific sorts of radiation. One is gamma, which can be picked up by a Geiger counter. It's like an X-ray. The other is beta radiation, which cannot be detected by a Geiger counter. The only way to work out how these children have been contaminated internally by internal emitters is to put them in whole body counters and measure the spectroscopy coming from various radioactive elements. That's too expensive, time-consuming, and it hasn't been done. I will say, though, that about 2 weeks ago, several American helicopters flew over the area around Fukushima and found levels of radiation in the air, not on the ground, in the air, of 3.4 to 14 tetrabecquerels. Now, a tetrabecquerel is a million becquerels, okay? 3.4 to 14 tetrabecquerels. Now, the exclusion zone around Chernobyl was 550,000 becquerels. Wow. So, by orders of magnitude, this radiation is far, far more severe than that which landed on the ground in the exclusion zone around Chernobyl. So I don't think anyone really knows at all how much radiation has been released, is being released, and will be released in the future. It's a guessing game because they've been so concerned. I mean, they've been running around in the dark trying to control these reactors because they've had no electricity. It's just been amazingly terrible.
So, Dr. Caldicott, you mentioned plutonium. Plutonium is an element, one of the elements that does not really go away. It sticks around for how many years? Hundreds. Tell us a little bit about it and how dangerous it is.
Okay, plutonium was never made. There was a little bit naturally found in an area in Africa where there was a spontaneous fission process, but it's man-made. It's created when you fission uranium. Now, it's not a fission product as such. It's not when you split the uranium atom, and 200 elements are made when you split uranium, but this is called a transuranic element. What happens is uranium-238, which is heavy, captures a neutron, and that turns into plutonium-239. Now, there are various isotopes of plutonium-238, which has a shorter half-life and is even more toxic than 239. But 239 is a really nice one because you only need 10 pounds to make yourself an atomic bomb, and that's why, in the first place, they fissioned uranium. Now, plutonium is named after its inventor or founder, Glenn Seaborg, after the god of hell, Pluto, and he wanted to call it Plutonium, but they like the sound of plutonium better. It is so toxic that 1/1,000,000th of a gram, if inhaled, could induce lung cancer. Now, you don't just drop dead immediately from lung cancer. It might take 60 years for it to present itself, but it's very toxic. Now, the body thinks plutonium is iron, so it combines with the iron transporting protein in the body, and it's stored in the liver where it causes liver cancer, clearly. If inhaled into the lung, it causes lung cancer. It goes to the bone where hemoglobin is made, and hemoglobin needs iron, so there it can cause bone cancer or leukemia by mutating regulatory genes in cells so that they start dividing in an uncontrolled fashion. That's a cancer. It has a predilection for testicles and ovaries, and every male in the northern hemisphere has a tiny amount of plutonium in his testicles. What that means, we will never know, but it induces mutations like genes for diabetes or cystic fibrosis or 2,000 or more such diseases that are passed on generation to generation, and it may take up to 20 generations for two recessive mutations like for cystic fibrosis or diabetes to get together when two people